Great afternoon to everyone. We'll bring this Education Economic Development Subcommittee to order. To get this day started, no, I'm not the chair at the moment, the vice chair of EED, but we'll get started with our budget analysis from Ms. Sarah Baker.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Exhibit 2 on page 7, which shows a change in fall undergraduate enrollment between fall 2022 and 2023. Overall, enrollment increased 3.2%. However, when excluding Global Campus, enrollment slightly declined by 0.1%. 5 institutions saw enrollment increases, with UMES experienced the highest rate of growth of 15.7%, or 300 students. At 344, Towson had the largest decrease in the number of students. A bright spot is the enrollment in first-time students grew for the 5th year, mainly due to increases at College Park and Towson. But 4 institutions did see their enrollment of first-time students decline. Exhibit 3 on page 9 shows the impact COVID had on undergraduate enrollment, with fall 2019 used as a baseline for comparison. Since 2019, enrollment has declined 2.1%, but when excluding Global Campus, it has decreased by 8.6%. 4 institutions, enrollment increased at 4 institutions, and as you can see, it fell at the regional institutions, which experienced double-digit rates of decline. Enrollment declines exceeded 24% at University of Baltimore, Frostburg, and Coppin. And this leads to concerns about the financial stability of these institutions, as they need to find ways to cover enrollment revenue loss. So we asked the Chancellor to comment on factors contributing to the decline in enrollment at the regional institutions, challenges to growing and increasing access to these institutions, and the impact of increased competition for fewer students among the institutions. Exhibit 4 on page 10 breaks down the undergrad enrollment by student status. The largest decline in the numbers of students occurred in fall 21, and that was driven by 5,000 students not returning to campus. So overall, the number of first-time students has recovered and exceeds the pre-pandemic level of over 14,600 students. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows attrition by student level. And you'll note the percentage of students not returning in 2020 declined across all levels, which seemed to indicate remote learning did not keep students from re-enrolling. However, the increase in 21 suggests they may have not had a positive experience. The attrition rate declined across all levels in 23, and I note for the freshmen, the rate dropped from 30.2% in 2019 to 23% in 23. Since 2019, over 95,000 students did not return to the same institution, representing opportunities for these institutions. As we talked about in the higher ed overview, the National Student Clearinghouse identified those students who stopped out since 2020 as most likely to return and earn a degree. When we asked the Chancellor to comment on institutions' efforts to reach out to those who have stopped out to return and earn their degrees. Exhibit 6 on page 14 compares MHEC's enrollment projections to those provided by institutions that are in the budget books. And I just note this because DBM broke from past practice of using enrollment numbers in the budget books for calculating the funding of the Caden-Salinger formulas. And instead, DBM is now using MHEC's projections, which, as you can see, are 7% higher than was presented in the budget books. This resulted in a reduction of 8 per full-time equivalent students at the selected public 4-year institutions, leading to the funding formulas being funded less than projected. Moving to student performance on page 14, Exhibit 7 shows the impact COVID had on the second-year retention rate. In general, the pandemic had the greatest impact on the 22 cohort. And I would note that their first year of college was done remotely, so they did not have the typical college experience, which may have affected them coming back to the institution. The rate for the 23 cohort did increase across all institutions except for Frostburg and Eastern Shore. Exhibit 8 on page 15 shows the 3rd-year retention rate. And overall, the rate for the 22 cohort was a mixed bag, improving at some institutions and declining at others. While the rates have not rebounded to the pre-pandemic levels as expected with the improvements in the 2nd-year rate, the 3rd-year rate will improve with the 23 cohort. Turning to graduation rates on page 16, Exhibit 9 compares the 6-year graduation rates of the 14 and 18 cohorts. Overall, USM attained its highest rate of 61% with the 2014 cohort, which was one of the last to graduate before the pandemic. The rate has since fallen to 57% with the 2018 cohort, which can be attributed to the pandemic in which fewer students enrolled or came back to campus. This impact can be seen on the undergraduate degree production as shown on Exhibit 10 on page 17. So after increasing to the highest number of degrees in 22, the number conferred decreased by 5% in 23. If you exclude global campus, the number declined 9.6% since 2020 to over 19,000, which is the fewest number of degrees awarded since 2012. Exhibit 11 on page 18 shows workforce and other degrees awarded by institution. The goal of USM's strategic plan is not only to increase degree production, but also increase the number of STEM, healthcare, and cybersecurity graduates. The targets for these are listed on the bottom of the page and on to the next. The number of workforce-related degrees declined 1.1% since 2021. And while the number of STEM degrees increased by 96, the number of healthcare related degrees fell by 221, which was mainly driven by almost a 25% drop in the number of degrees awarded by Towson. The number of other degrees conferred declined by 7.4%, resulting in a 4.8% decrease in the total number of degrees awarded since 2021. Moving on to the budget on page 20, Exhibit 12 shows the proposed budget. State funds decreased 2.2% or $45.2 million when excluding the impact of the 24 general salary increases in 25, which are not included in the 24 working appropriation. I would note that USM's budget assumes a 2% increase in resident tuition in 25. So we asked the Chancellor to comment on whether the decrease in state support will lead USM to revisit its planned 2% tuition increase. Decreases in the allowance are listed on page 21, include $55 million related to adjusting the turnover rate to 6%, $8.5 million for one-time funding related to legislative additions in the 24 budget, $5 million for one-time funding at the universities of Shady Grove for workforce development initiatives, and $717,000 in Bowie's allocation of HBCU funds. Additions to the allowance are shown at the bottom of the page and on to the next, which includes $6.6 million to fund 3 mandates, $4.8 million to provide matching funds for UMES's extension program, and $700,000 to UMBC to increase funding for the Maryland Technology Internship Program, which will bring the total funding to $1.1 million. In addition, there is $12 million providing for increases in operating costs. It should be noted that the allowance does not include funds for the increase of Maryland's share of the professional instructional costs for the regional med college. An agreement between Virginia Tech and College Park in 1989 established a college in which a total of 120 slots are reserved for Maryland residents. Under statute, Maryland is to provide appropriate level of general funds to meet the financial requirements of the instructional programs. In 24, the state share is $6.4 million and increases by $500,000 in 25. In order to meet the state's obligation, College Park will need to find funds in other areas of their budget. Exhibit 13 on page 23 looks at unrestricted expenditures and revenues. Currently in 24, there is an estimated $46.1 million shortfall, which is more than covered by an expected $77.2 million surplus in auxiliary. And since the 25 allowance includes the 24 general salary increase that are not in the 24 working appropriation, a comparison really can't be made between the 2 years. But I do note tuition fee revenues in 25 are based on enrollment projections, and changes in enrollments can significantly impact an institution's revenues. So adjustments will be made in their budgets as the numbers become clearer. Turning to personnel, Exhibit 14 on page 26, this shows the vacancy rates by institutions as of last December. And you'll note that 7 institutions have rates in the double digits, with Bowie and Shady Grove having rates that exceed 20%. Exhibit 15 on page 27 compares authorized and filled positions between 2019 and 24. The largest decline in filled positions occurred in academic support. And the number of unfilled positions in student services increased from 141 to 502, which is a concern because these positions provide services directly to the students, which can impact retention. And we asked the chancellor to comment on the increases in the number of vacant positions, factors contributing to the increases, and challenges to filling the positions. And now I will turn it over to Kelly for the issues.
Thank you. Issue 1 begins on page 28 and covers Coppin State University and University of Maryland Eastern Shore's in-state tuition for out-of-state students program. In April of 2023, the USM Board of Regents approved Coppin State and University of Maryland Eastern Shore to extend in-state tuition to out-of-state students from states with no HBCUs. This tuition policy would affect students from 30 states and goes into effect in fall of 2024. This policy is not retroactive. It will not apply to returning students nor graduate students from the eligible states and territories. The president should comment if there is any plan to extend the program to returning students. Coppin State University has established a transfer agreement with the Colorado Community College system and plans to do similar agreements with California, Illinois, and Massachusetts. In the first year, UMES expects an additional 100 students and an additional 300 students in following years. 3 of the states that will be extended in-state tuition are New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. These 3 states are the largest contributors of out-of-state students for Coppin State and UMES. Exhibit 16 shows the percentage of out-of-state undergraduate students from New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania at the 2 institutions. In higher education, typically out-of-state students subsidize the education of in-state students by paying higher tuition and fees. For fall 2025, in-state tuition is expected to be $7,100 and out-of-state tuition is expected to be $14,023 at Coppin State, while UMES tuition and fees for in-state and out-of-state students is expected to be $9,076 and $20,122 respectively. Both universities are essentially reducing the potential out-of-state tuition revenue in half for each student impacted. The president should address how this plan might affect its out-of-state tuition and fee revenues and its budgets. The second issue begins on page 29 and covers the new Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program at University of Maryland Eastern Shore. In December 2023, USM Board of Regents approved a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine or DVM program at UMES. MHEC approved the new program January 16th, 2024, making it the second DVM program offered by a Maryland institution. The other program is offered by University of Maryland College Park through a partnership with Virginia Tech. While UMES program will be the second, it will be the only one physically offered in the state due to the Virginia Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine being housed on Virginia Tech's campus. In addition to being the second Maryland institution with a DVM program, UMES will be the second HBCU in the nation to offer said degree, joining Tuskegee University in Alabama. UMES indicates that the proposed program will address the current veterinarian shortage that is expected to grow to 40,000 by 2030. In addition to addressing the shortage, UMES hopes the program will diversify the veterinarian profession and shore up the number of rural veterinarians. Only 3% of veterinarians are Black, and 44 states have federally designated private practice food supply veterinary medicine shortages in rural areas. The academic proposal submitted to MHEC indicates that for the first 5 years of the program, the expected revenues will outpace the expenditures as shown in Exhibit 17 on page 30. While UMES has indicated that the DVM program will essentially pay for itself from year 1, that does not include the $13.9 million and the startup costs needed to create the school. The president should address the anticipated funding sources for the startup costs for the proposed school, including the possible use of HBCU settlement funding. UMES has indicated that there is a commitment to provide clinical rotations from the largest national practices at no cost to UMES, a significant cost-saving measure because schools usually carry the cost of clinical rotations. UMES has indicated preliminary commitments for donations valued at $6 million to $10 million, clinical rotations valued between $500,000 and $750,000, and curriculum delivery valued between $300,000 and $500,000. The president should comment on the status of these commitments, the length of clinical rotations, donations, and curriculum delivery, and alternatives if these commitments are not finalized. The new program will require new facilities. UMES has indicated that the program will begin by using a mix of existing infrastructure on its campus, particularly the use of the new School of Pharmacy and Health Professions building. Phase 1 of that building has been completed, and Phase 2 will include plans for dedicated veterinary space and is not slated to be completed until fiscal 2029. UMES MHEC proposal also includes plans for a 10,000 to 15,000 square foot veterinary skills center that will also include office space, student services, and work areas, as well as a bovine teaching center and a small equine stable. These proposed facilities are not in the fiscal 2025 capital improvement program. The president should address how the existing physical spaces will adequately serve the DVM program, as well as the timeline for the newly proposed facilities. UMES will be seeking accreditation from the Council of Education, or COE, of the American Veterinary Medical Association. The COE has 11 standards of accreditation. Of these standards, 3 could use more detail in how they will be met. Those 3 standards are physical facilities and equipment, clinical resources, and faculty. The COE's physical facilities and equipment standard requires an on-campus veterinary teaching hospital or a formal affiliation with one or more off-campus veterinary hospitals or other training sites used for teaching. UMES proposal does not include a plan for a veterinary teaching hospital and uses the distributed teaching model with clinical rotations in lieu of a veterinary teaching hospital. The proposal includes plans for the aforementioned donated clinical rotations that can meet the standard of physical facilities and clinical resources. However, if those donated clinical rotations do not materialize, UMES will be deficient on 2 standards. The COE also requires that faculty numbers and qualifications must be sufficient to deliver the educational program and fulfill the mission of the college. UMES plans to have a total of 25 full-time faculty members within 5 years. As of December 31st, 2023, UMES has 56 vacant faculty positions. UMES has indicated that a number of those vacancies are related to the faculty lines for this anticipated new program. The president should address how UMES plans to adequately staff the new school. And I will turn it back to Sarah Baker for the recommendations.
Okay, the recommendations on page 32 and is to concur with the governor's budget. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much to our budget analyst team. They always do an impeccable job with bringing us this information. So thank you so much. Any question for our budget analyst? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Now we'll bring up our University System of Maryland Chancellor, Dr. Jay Perman, and your team. May begin when you're seated.
Chair Harris, members of the subcommittee, again, thank you for the chance to testify. And as always, we appreciate the analysis offered by our analysts. I'm joined by Dr. Allison Rinn at the far end to my right, who is Senior Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs. And to my immediate right, Ellen Herbst, our Senior Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance. And I know people who need no introductions, my colleagues, UMES President, Dr. Heidi Anderson, Coppin State President, Dr. Anthony Jenkins. And I know behind me, we are joined by Dr. Mark Ginsburg, our president of Towson University, and Dr. Greg Fowler of UMGC. I might also mention, please, that in the audience is Director Ann Kademian of the universities at Shady Grove. Before I get into the analysts' questions, I wish to quickly mention our progress on opening access to a USM education. Access, yes, it relies on many things. It relies a great deal on affordability. And that's what I'd like to focus on, because that's where we're investing our money. And yes, if the budget should allow it, it's where we hope you might invest. some additional dollars as well. As I mentioned the other day, and I'll briefly reemphasize it, we've undertaken a study whose early evidence indicates that financial aid, frankly, in any amount, influences not only college enrollment, but college completion. And looking at STEM students thus far at 2 of our universities, preliminary data show that completion rates among high-need students nearly double with the provision of financial aid. Last year, our universities distributed $90 million of institutional aid in need-based aid to undergraduates, up 45% in just 1 year. And that aid reached 26,000 students, 5,000 students more than the year before. These numbers will grow. Our $150 million quasi-endowment, approved by the General Assembly last year, should generate an additional $6.4 million in need-based aid to our students every year going forward. This growth is a direct result of your support. You enable us to open doors to higher education that were once closed. It's important that we keep the momentum going. And with that, I'll go into the questions posed by our analysts. I've been asked to comment first on factors contributing to enrollment declines at our regional universities, challenges to increasing access, and the impact of more competition for fewer students. Regional universities are deeply affected by the changing demographics of higher ed. More first-generation students, more lower-income students, an older undergraduate population, more working adults. Those are the demographics that impact regional institutions significantly. These are the students, in fact, that are largely served by our regional universities and our regional higher education centers. But those students are often unwilling to accumulate debt, and they take fewer credits at a time. Enrollment among these older working students really tanked during the pandemic. And while the numbers are recovering, they're recovering more slowly than for first-time full-time students. Still, we've seen encouraging enrollment numbers at our regionals. Towson enrolled a record first-year class last fall. Salisbury enrolled its second largest freshman class ever. This should be encouraging to us. To help regionals long-term, we need to grow students' non-loan aid. Working students often get little or no Pell funding, and part-time students often lose out on institutional aid because we tend to incentivize full-time enrollment. There's a reason for that, by the way. Full-time students are more likely to graduate. But we can't overlook our sizable part-time population. Our regional universities and our regional centers are therefore expanding online programs and courses. They are innovating their international and regional outreach, and they're developing new programs which are particularly targeted to needs in their regional workforce. Regionals in rural areas like Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore are implementing strategies to enroll more underrepresented minority students, including Latinx students, where we see the greatest potential for growth. In terms of competition for students among our regionals, we don't see a huge problem. We see pockets of application overlap within the system, but not a compelling pattern. Minimizing this competition is the fact that our USM universities begin academic program development with a letter of intent, allowing their sister USM universities to weigh in if they see the potential for problematic overlap and to work toward a solution, often to collaborate. Where we do see competition is with out-of-state schools and online universities. This has implications for our program offerings because candidates who apply at one of our universities will often apply at a peer institution out of state. And about 40% of those who choose the out-of-state school enroll in an academic program that's not offered by its USM peer. Now, we're looking at institutional competition as part of our strategic planning efforts, but we know the best way to grow enrollment is twofold. Yes, one, help more high-need and underrepresented Marylanders to pursue college and work as a system to retain in-state applicants who have the resources to go elsewhere. We're actively engaged in that. Secondly, I'm asked to comment on our efforts to re-enroll those who've stopped out of their education. I answered this question during my higher ed testimony on Monday, so I'll quickly reprise some important points. First, we focus a lot of attention on preventing students from stopping out in the first place. We try to find out early why enrolled students haven't registered for the next semester, and we work with them to remove the obstacles that prevent them from continuing. If I may, I'll just add something about money again, and I've talked about this in previous years. We are recognizing the need not just for the formal aid that I've talked about, we're recognizing the need for what I call micro grants or micro scholarships. The student that owes some money for tuition versus $400, for example, for rent. We've built mechanisms to start helping those students. I think we'd all rather see the $400 provided than lose a student to an opportunity to finish an education. We've simplified the readmission process. For instance, continuous enrollment at some of our universities allows students to re-enroll without doing the whole reapplying process. And we're offering program flexibility so that students can come back to school without starting over. It's the old life happens. They might have to stop for a bit. It ought to be pretty seamless to come back. And our universities have near completer programs providing wraparound financial, academic advising, personal support to beckon the student back, to lure the student back for their degree. I'm asked to comment on the increase in vacant positions within the USM, those factors contributing to the increase and the challenges in filling positions. Since the pandemic, yes, our universities are finding it more difficult to recruit and hire qualified faculty and staff. We all know it's a dynamic, competitive job market, not just for us, but for higher education across the country. So we're working on new recruiting strategies. We're regularly reviewing salary levels to make sure we're competitive in the job market and fair and consistent in our pay practices. I do want to emphasize a point made in the analyst report, namely that our HBCUs have received $58 million in coalition settlement funding to develop, expand, and improve academic programs. That is work that is dependent on creating new faculty and academic support positions. So we are very attentive to the fact that as we stand up new programs, desired programs, we have to solve this issue of getting the positions that we need filled. I've been asked to comment on whether the decrease in state support will lead us to revisit our planned, typically annual 2% increase in in-state tuition. In other words, tuition limited to a 2% increase. Again, I have to acknowledge that it's with your support that we've been very aggressive and capable of being aggressive in keeping Maryland higher education affordable. Years ago, not so many years ago, 2004, 2005, Maryland was one of the costliest states in the nation for resident students. We ranked 4th or 5th. Now we're about 26th. Our in-state tuition and fees are below the national average and well below those of neighboring states. That happened as a direct result of the state's generous support to the system. And every dollar of that support is important to carrying out our mission. So this year's proposed cut does affect us. It affects our delivery of programs and student services. At the same time, we understand the state's budget situation, and we're prepared to manage these cuts. That said, of course, we're concerned about further cuts that might be made to our budget and about several proposed bills that could have significant fiscal impact on our universities. So my honest response to you is, should additional burden come or costly bills move forward, we'll need to be able to ask our Board of Regents to consider a tuition increase above 2%. I'm happy to answer with my colleagues additional questions now, or happy to cede the microphone to my esteemed colleagues here to my left, Dr. Jenkins and Dr. Anderson. Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry to be tardy. I had a bill hearing in Economic Matters. Happy to be here with everyone today. President Anderson and then President Jenkins.
Excellent. You want to? No. You go right ahead.
No, ladies first.
Chivalry.
It still exists. Well, first of all, I join the Chancellor in saying to this delegation and this body, thank you very much for all that you do for us. From our faculty, our staff, and our students, we appreciate all of the support. We also appreciate the support of Governor Moore, who, as you know, has put in his proposed budget package that we will look at our match, which we will not talk about today, our one-on-one match, but we will double that. And then we also want to extend our support and appreciation to the Maryland Black Caucus for their support and visiting to our campus. You asked us to respond to a couple of things. First of all, to the HBCU tuition initiative. This is an initiative that I have to thank my brother colleague over here for the genius of coming up with, and our institution decided to join him. We are grateful that our Board of Regents approved this particular initiative. And this initiative will assist both of our institutions, but at UMES, the reason it will assist us is that at this particular time, a large number of our out-of-state students come to us from states where there are HBCUs, but they want to be here in Maryland. What this particular initiative allows us to do is extend this to those students who want to graduate as an HBCU alum, but do so, they don't have HBCUs in their own states. So I can give you a personal example. I'm from Indiana, as the chair knows, and there is no HBCU in my state. I also I'm a first gen from a lower income family, and we could not even have afforded to send me out of the state. So this particular type of initiative is for students who are just like me, who wanted to have that experience and could not get it. And now we're able to give them that kind of opportunity. It is going to be very helpful to our institution because at this particular time, we will not, as the analysts ask us to respond to, extend this to any of our returning students or our current students. It'll be for new students. And it won't harm the current students because we're going to continue to support them and do discounting models that will continue to help them through graduation. So it won't set up a two-tier system, so to say, where we have that problem. The other thing that you asked us to respond to from the standpoint of our particular institution is how this might affect our fee and revenue. As I pointed out, 50% of our current UMES out-of-state students come from states that do have an HBCU, but those students would not be eligible for this particular scholarship program because we're already taking care of them. This will help us have a really healthy mix of in-state, out-of-state students without damaging the current percentage that is allowed there. And at our university, for every 2 students who come from out of state, we will make up the difference with those particular 2 students. The tuition will be comparable. The last thing I will say is at this time, we get, in 2023, we had 24% students who came from out of state just for our undergraduate program. In 2022, it was 21% students, and 2021 was 20% students. So I will save my other question about the VET program after my colleague here speaks. Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. I won't be too long. Madam Chair, it is a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee and speak. And to the committee, thank you. To the analysts, thank you for the information that you also provided. And to the Chancellor and to the USM system, it's good to be here with everyone. As Dr. Anderson noted, our similarities are very similar with the 2 institutions, and with regards to the program, I'll only take credit for it if it works.
You're gonna blame me.
If it doesn't work, it was all UMES's. So that's how that works. But to the 2 questions that we were asked to answer, also at Coppin State University, our program is officially called Expand Eagle Nation. And that's essentially what we are wanting to do. As noted, we are very committed to not only the great state of Maryland and Baltimore City, but we also want to expand the opportunity for students who do not have an HBCU in their respective states that want that HBCU heritage and culture, regardless of race and ethnicity. At Coppin, we see students who come to us from 35 different states, the District of Columbia, and 30 countries. So we have a very diverse, very multicultural, multi-generational student population that we educate. And there are students, obviously, across our nation that want that type of experience. And that's what this program is ultimately designed to do. The program itself will begin in fall 24. There were many logistical things we wanted to set up on campus first to make sure that we could monitor and track these students with regards to billing, notifications, those type of things over the lifetime that they are with the university. Like noted with the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, we have no plans, and I have been very clear that this program is for students moving forward, not for students who are currently at Coppin at the undergrad or graduate level, regardless of what state they are coming from. For the simple fact, well, the most important fact is our current students have already been packaged under Title IV. And so to make any changes to their financial portfolio could create unnecessary havoc, audits, funds that they have to repay, and so forth. And so when I had this campus conversation with my campus, I was very clear with them as to why we were not going to do it for existing students. And they understood that it could present, or it could create more issues than are necessary. Right now for Coppin State, about 13 to 15% of our students come from out of state. And with this particular program, looking at our mix moving forward, we looked at our data. For every out-of-state student, we would need to recruit about 1.4. I don't know how we get to the 4 part of a student, but 1.4 new students to offset any revenue loss to our campus. And we feel confident that we can do that. This past fall, we saw our enrollment grow 5% overall. Our freshman enrollment grew by 20%. Our transfers grew by 35%. And so we have put, I think, some very important measures in place that will allow us to continue to grow, expand access and opportunity. And because we're Maryland's most affordable four-year university, we think that this will be a win-win for Maryland and Coppin and the students, obviously. With that, Madam Chair, I'll yield and answer any questions that you or the committee members may have.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I see we have a question from Delegate Grace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. First, in regards to tuition reimbursement and helping with that, I wholeheartedly agree. But given our fiscal restraints that we have, our constraints that we have, what are your thoughts about targeting this certain industries where we have a big shortage? Doctors, nurses, or teaching, in particular, minority teachers. There's a huge shortage there, and we're having a hard time recruiting. And trades as well. So I guess my question is, what is your position on targeting certain sectors of our economy and trying to recruit? And then second of all, what about making this tuition reimbursement condition on them staying in the state of Maryland and working in our state for over a certain period of time? And then my next question has to go back to the teachers again. So with our HBCUs offering in-state tuition for out-of-state students, do you see by doing that, or are we going to be able to bring potentially more teachers into the state of Maryland? Will that help with our recruiting by doing that?
Thank you. I'll respond first and I'll let you. Okay. Thank you. And those are excellent questions. And I think that we can speak to each one of them. I think from the targeting aspect of it, that's a part of our approach at Coppin. As I like to talk about, which is well known, we have the #1 nursing program among Maryland HBCUs. We know that nursing is extremely important. We have had conversations with students who visit our campus from California and Oklahoma and other places, and they want to major in nursing. I think what's going to be very critical is once we get them here, because we will get them here, it's what opportunities for employment then do they have in the state? That's going to be a very important partnership moving forward. So when we talk about residency and internships and all of those things, working with our hospitals and other industries, that's going to be very important and crucial in making sure that they can connect the dots that I came to this state, I got a quality, affordable education. Now, where's the return on investment? And that's the actual job. So we are very committed with that. We have stood up our Center for Inclusive Excellence, which is focused on and been tapped as a national model of how we are focusing on getting more teachers of color into the K-12 setting. Not only within our state, we in the same breath as looking at nursing and other high need areas or majors, we are looking at how we draw more students into the state and then connect them to our K-12 system. Obviously, from a Coppin standpoint, we would like that talent to stay in Baltimore City. But we also have great K-12 schools throughout the state. And so we are committed to making sure that Dr. Wong, who oversees the center, is really driving that effort. So we're very excited about that. We're also doing the same approach with social workers, which we need more in our state also. And then your last question was focusing on the in-state tuition. Yes. So again, more recruitment, trying to help students see the value in going into the classroom. I think to your other point, it would be problematic for us to tie this initiative to some mandate that you have to stay in the state X amount of years. I think that moves beyond where institutions of higher education need to be. And that's more of a statewide matter that I don't believe would be in our best interest. And I think it would turn individuals off. I think that once we get them here, if we can show them the beauty of our state, the economic upward mobility of our state, they will stay. 70% of our graduates at Coppin stay in the state of Maryland. 50% stay in Baltimore. And so we have a track record of doing that. I think as we bring more students and create more opportunities for employment and in a future, we can move that number north.
Family in Maryland, usually they
Yes.
stay in Maryland.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And just to answer the same question, the aspect that you get at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore from that perspective is a rural aspect, because we really are focused in making sure our students understand the rural basis of being in a particular, in our institution. So when I look at answering your question about targeted, we do that now, similar to my colleague here. We actually target in several areas. Many of you have heard me say at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, we are your 1890 STEAM institution, which means we're bringing them in science, technology, engineering, agriculture, aviation, the arts, and math. So we have students, for example, will come to our institution out of state. Arizona is the most recent one that comes to mind, just to major in aviation sciences. Why? Because we have the only 4-year BS Aviation Sciences degree program in the state, and we're an HBCU. And so I could show you TED Talks of our students who've come to us and been there and actually majored in these majors, or you look at agriculture because of us being in 1890. That's what I mean by being targeted. So we have scholarships and we have financial aid that is targeted for those particular disciplines. One of our other niche programs, our PGM Hospitality Tourism Management degree. We have a 4-year Caves Valley relationship with scholarship for those students. So we already do the targeted piece very, very well, and we'll continue to do that. The standpoint of them working and staying in the state, we also see almost 70% of our students remain in the state when they come to us. And the interesting aspect of that is that rural component that I mentioned. They will either stay on the Eastern Shore, maybe not in Somerset or Princess Anne, but somewhere up and down the Eastern Shore, or they will go over to the Western Shore in the rural area. And so we have seen that occurring. And then your last question about teachers, I want to give a shout out to to Dr. Warren, Dr. Richard Warren. He was also the Maryland State, for the whole state, Teacher of the Year, I think in 2018. He is now works for us. He was in high school, in the grade school working and put out a lot of teachers, but he has created a new initiative called Men of Color. And this is an initiative that he has at our institution to really push teaching, but especially for Black men or men of color. And that is a shortage, and it's such a dire need in the school systems. If you think of K through 12 and you're a young boy and not having someone that looks like you, in the classroom, that makes a difference. And so Dr. Warren's program is in its 3rd year, really taking off and doing quite well. And we see that's going to be a way that he actually keeps some of those teachers on the shore as well.
If I may briefly add, piggybacking off what President Anderson said, if President Bro were here, our president at Bowie State, she would also point out a national model to do exactly what President Anderson talked about, to encourage men of color to become teachers and prepare them for that career. The other comment I can't resist making is to thank you for a common interest that we both have, seeing loan assistance repayment, which is standing in Maryland, grow. If we want to keep folks here, a powerful tool for doing that is paying off their loans over a period of time in exchange for service for a period of time. That can work with all of these professions.
Okay.
Delegate? Okay, great. Delegate Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I'd like to say yo to my frat brother that's here. But then more the question now is to our good chancellor. So my question is, as we sit here going through the analysis and listen to you all's great feedback. When we talk about retention and we talk about, raising tuition, or we talk about post-pandemic atmosphere, do we look at, the student that actually want to stay home, right, and do more online? Is that in the numbers? That's my first question. And second question would be, are we developing even more enhanced or stronger programs for online, being that we are in a atmosphere now where folks are literally working from home in most cases. And so now they have less time traveling back and forth for work. So now they have that additional 2 to 4 hours a day that they can actually utilize to do online classes to further their degree. So is that part of the analysis as well?
The answer is unequivocally yes. The pandemic was a terrible thing, but it taught people like me and my colleagues that there are things we thought we could never do that we're doing very well now. So ingrained in what we're doing is totally remote classes, hybrid classes, some time at home. With nursing, I've seen programs to prepare us for the greater need for nurse practitioners where they come and convene once a month in person. The rest is at home because those folks have full-time jobs. In our regional higher education centers, they often serve people that are married, that have a family, that have a job. They can't come to our bucolic campuses. So we have adapted to them. We're doing more of it. We're doing the faculty development that we need to do in order to provide a different model for teaching. The answer, as I said, unequivocally yes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Dr. Muller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a very quick question about retention as well, specifically with the students that may be stopping. You spoke to all the efforts that are underway to help students stay enrolled, engaged. I wonder what capabilities faculty have because they see students on a regular basis. I know student services plays a big role in that, but supporting and system-wide also in terms of training that they have to identify a student in need, where to send that student should they see something that's happening. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, thank you very much, but I'm going to ask my colleague in a second to give a specific example. At UMES, Dr. Anderson, and she can talk about it better than me, convenes the campus regularly, including the faculty, and says to them, retention is not simply the job of somebody, important somebody, in a student affairs office. Retention is everybody's business, including the faculty. Heidi?
I'll be happy to add. You're correct, Chancellor. I have called what I call a war on attrition. And so if it's a war, that means we all need to be involved in solving the solution. So it's everyone's business, from the groundkeeper, the housekeeper, all the way up to the faculty. And what we have done over the past 2.5 years, especially since COVID, is we have had regular meetings. And this is all campus meetings where we come together on a monthly basis to look at our data, to analyze our data and determine what is keeping the students from staying here. And then we have strategies that we have put in place. So for example, just with someone like in the cafeteria, some of the strategies is to, if you're seeing a particular student coming in on a regular basis and one day you happen to notice that they look a little bit disheveled or not comfortable or something's going on, stop and ask what's going on, get them to the right place. All of our staff and faculty, we try to give them access to information about mental health counseling, other services that we may have on the campus. We increased our mental health awareness and counseling to having 24/7 services to make sure that we retain students. We have from the coaches all the way up to everyone, like I said, is fully involved with this. I report to the chancellor on a regular basis about what the data is showing and how it's looking. And then the last thing we did was looked at putting in professional development for our staff and our employees so that everyone would have a feel for how do you take, how do we say retention is my business and what is my role in it? So they have full days of professional development where they're learning little things that they can do to really help the students move along. And so it's not just in the faculty hands as it used to be only, or just the advisors. It really truly is everyone's. And I'm sure my colleagues, you had other things that you've been doing in retention as well.
Sure, very, very quickly. At Coppin, we are having similar conversations. And one of the many things that we did was we established our Ego Achievement Center. This is a one-stop shop where we brought key student support services into one location, whether it's supplemental instruction, academic coaching, first-year advising, career counseling, and so forth. We centralized those areas and worked to help the campus and students understand, to your point, that is the first point of entry in solving students' issues and getting them connected to campus. When I arrived in 2020 and 2019, our retention rate was 57%. This year, our retention rate is 74%. That's higher than the national average for public four-year institutions and higher than the state average for four-year public institutions. And because we started focusing more and being proactive and having best practices put in place based off our data, not off the national data, but our data and understanding our students, we were able to make such huge gains. The other point that you raised, I thought that was so important, is that we also established our Reimagine Yourself at Coppin program, where we identified 400 students, just over 400 students, who had left Coppin without earning their degree. This past fall, we brought back 114 of those students, over 25%, to finish their degree, and they're on track to actually do that. So those are some of the steps when we talk about retention at Coppin. That's really our foundation for growing the institution. It's not only bringing students in the front door, but it's how many more students can you retain? And we're focusing on how we retain more students from semester to semester. Last year, we did about 87%. Historically, we were in the low 70s. So all of those metrics for us are ticking north. Hence, we are seeing the overall enrollment grow for our institution. And then lastly, I'll just say to the chancellor's point and to your point, Delegate, with the online piece, what we saw at Coppin was that our students, even though we've rolled out fully online degree programs, that's not what they come to us for. They want that high touch, high impact human interaction. What COVID did to Coppin was devastating. What it did to our students was unbelievable. We also found out that the digital divide, institutions didn't take into account for the digital divide. We all flipped our campuses, sent students home without appreciating that many of them didn't have devices, didn't have connectivity, didn't have the internet, right? And so for us, that was a very hard lesson. We learned some things, as the chancellor noted, how we could be more productive and efficient with technology. But for Coppin students, it took a toll on their academic life. And that was something that we learned coming out of the pandemic.
Delegate Harris?
So appreciate that. So yeah, so I agree with you 100%. So more for me, it was more focused more on the senior adult portion of the person that's looking to go back to college or returning back to college. And now they actually have a full-time job. Now they're working. And actually, I'd love to know if we have any data that shows that of the returning student and the returning adult, and how are they completing their college based if online is more critical for them or in person. So it's more in that angle versus the actual student coming right out of high school.
Yes, sir.
We all want to answer you, so. Can we have?
Go ahead. And I'll give it, go ahead.
We do track, and I want to acknowledge someone else from our team that's in the audience, Chad Muntz, who is just an expert in leading a team of people that slices and dices not only our own data, but state data. We're very grateful for state data collection efforts, federal collection efforts. So I believe we can provide that to you because we do look at data very granularly. And he's going, yes, we can do that. So.
It'll come.
And we'll get, once we get all the data, but the only thing I wanted to add to that is, Delegate, it's an excellent point. And what we're about to do and embark on this fall at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore is 8 programs that our provost and the faculty have been working on to bring online specifically for working adults. We've also partnered with our partner back there, raise your hand, President Fowler from UMGC, because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to reinvent the wheel on how to do really good, effective online. So with that partnership, we're rolling out several programs that are totally online, specifically for the working adult population. They have now been approved by our Board of Regents, by MHEC, and please don't ask me what the degrees are because I can't remember all the names right now, but that is something that we were looking at targeting based on our data that we explored and said just from an exploratory study that this would be an effective population for us to add to the campus. Okay.
Oh, Delegate Willig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another quick follow-up based on the conversation we were having on data. I know the commissioner spoke the other day about a dashboard that's under works. I'm excited to see that, I think, when it's up. I may be referring to it with the wrong name, but he did talk about putting up some shareable data. My question is more related to being able to slice and dice, as you were just speaking to, because as we were looking through the report, you know, much of it is aggregated. So you have commuters, you have folks who are online, you have folks who are part-time and full-time, and who are having the very traditional college experience all looped into one. And so it would be for a data nerd like myself, just a really informative to be able to see where these trends really are. You know, is it really folks who are online that are dropping out, or is it, you know, another population? Is it the commuters? So how, if it's possible to sort of see the impact of some of these questions, depending on who the student is, the specificity around that would be very helpful.
Delegate, we can do all of that. Please.
So we have for the system schools, separate from what the commissioner was talking about, for the system schools, we have an online, publicly available, searchable presentation of data. That's a great place to start, and we'll include that right off the bat. And it's by university. It talks about demographics of our students, graduation rates, retention rates, et cetera. It's a great place to go to learn more about any of the schools in the system. And then below that level, we can do additional data slicing.
Are you referring to Iris by any chance?
Yes. Oh, you know, Iris, you've just made my day.
I love Iris. I'm familiar with it, but I was talking sort of
The next level down, and we can do that.
We can do it.
Because Iris is an aggregation up.
Yes.
So, okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I just want to say thank you for your presentations today. Thank you for your leadership. Oh, sorry. Did you want to follow up with the answer too?
No.
Oh, please. I don't want to
You had
foreclose
questions
any
on the
great
vet
things.
program. I was going to respond to them.
Oh, please
Oh,
continue.
that's right.
I apologize. I'm up here cutting you off, thinking you were done. Continue, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly on the veterinary medicine program, let me start by saying there's a couple of unique points that I would just want to make sure I add. First of all, I want to say thank you to the analysts because they pointed out some of these. We are embarking on a veterinary medicine program, and we thank you because that is a program that we're able to establish because of HBCU funding. So we're taking a large part of that funds focusing on this area. Our program is going to be different because the time frame, first of all, we're looking at getting students in a 3-year program out the door in the workforce faster with less debt. I know that you received my analyst and my background, and I won't go into a lot of the detail on that, but I don't want it to say this model is not it's not unique to UMES because we have been using a 3-year model with some of our other health professions. Our pharmacy, physical therapy, physician assistant programs are all follow this model, and all of the students are coming out with very, very high outcomes in state board exams, licensure, et cetera. And so we really feel that we have a niche market here. But the reason I also wanted to point it out to you is because it is in a rural setting, and that is so direly needed. The veterinarians that are needed in agriculture, in farming. And I always have to say, you know, how many of you have a pet like me? You know, our pets we need that care. So this is something that if you had a chance and if you didn't go back You'll see in my analysis that I sent you, I shared with you 2 student stories, and that's what I just like to end on. We had Gabrielle, who came to our campus, and these are students that I know and I've interacted with in my short time there. Gabrielle came from Prince George's County, from Friendly High School, and she came to us because she wanted to become a veterinarian. We're the only show in town, so to say, for pre-vet. Gabrielle also wanted to stay in Maryland to get her veterinary degree, because remember, you have to go to school and get a first-year degree, then you get this veterinary doctor of veterinary medicine. She applied, she got accepted at Indiana, my alma mater, at Purdue University, and that is where she is now. And she finished up with us a semester early. So she's an outstanding student. She's doing quite well at Purdue. She only has another year to go there. She'll come back home in the state, but think about that when you think about the approval of this program. Gabrielle is a student right here in the state, but had to go out of state for her final degree. This program is going to allow the students to stay here, like Donovan, who I mentioned in my analysis with you. Donovan is from Wicomico County, right up the street from our campus. And Donovan, he's so shy, he's so cute too. It's like, he's the one is with our goats right now. He takes care of our farm animals, and he's out there most days doing that. Donovan came to us in 2019 in a summer pathway program. We have a lot of summer pipeline programs. And in that pipeline program, he met Dr. Braxton, who's our founding dean for the vet program. And Donovan got very excited because, wow, he can be close to home. And he goes back and forth a lot to home and learn rural farming and rural health, rural veterinary medicine, which is what he wanted to major in and do. And so he is hopefully that fall of 2026, he was hoping to be part of that inaugural class that we have. That'll be a class of 100, which we know is going to be very, very helpful. We already have 85 students in our pre-vet for this past fall pre-vet. That's quadruple from what we normally get. So we know we're going to already attract. So I wanted to at least point that out to you. And to answer the analyst questions, we already have funding sources coming in from USDA, from private donors at this particular time. Because the approvals just got finished from MHEC just a few weeks ago, we're hoping to go ahead and get that sign off and have, major MOU signing on those particular things, but the funding will be there. And the analysts also asked about the staff. We have 5 faculty already working from our pre-vet through our agriculture sciences who are already on our campus. And so we know that we'll be able to fill the faculty that is needed. And the companies like Mars, and IDEX, they are going to supply dedicated faculty who will be working with this program virtually. Again, now that the approvals are in, they will sign off on that and we'll have that information very, very soon. So we're excited about the vet school coming to UMES, and so happy and thank everyone involved so far, and thank all of you for supporting that. And we will ask for your support at the capital level, because that is where we'll be needing to look at the added space that will be needed later on. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but you have the rest of it in my report.
Delegate Harris?
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. So glad that we actually went back to that because that is a pretty interesting program and very hard fought over the past couple of months and years. And so I noticed that it started fall of 2026. One of the things I noticed that everyone always talk about is the return on investments, right? And so the report stated that we will have a shortfall of about 15,000 by 2030, and we are only going to be enrolling roughly about 100 students per year starting in 2026. And so that'll be a good return on investment for the state of Maryland, because I'd love to know what is the hole that we will have that be in state of Maryland that we need to fill with those particular students that be graduating from veterinarians. So that'd be interesting to know, because that's a good return on investment.
Thank you, Delegate. That's a very good question, and we'll make sure we gather that data for you as well. So,
okay. For real this time, I apologize. I want to say thank you again for all of you for being here, your respective leadership on your campuses and with the entire U of M system. I do have a question for the Chancellor that I saw in your testimony as well as your oral testimony here, that, these cuts, you're a professional, you're going to find a way to ensure that you're delivering top tier education to Marylanders, and we're deeply grateful for that. But you do concede that there could be a need to pass on those, those costs to students in excess of 2% for in-state tuition. And so I know that we have heard between Monday and today, kind of a thread that student persistence is undermined by the lack of affordability. It seems that these increases could be at odds with maintaining the affordability that particularly first gen and other economically vulnerable students need. So I guess I want to hear from you. Do you believe that the decisions around these cuts are undermining some of your commitments around the persistence for economically vulnerable students?
Well, I certainly appreciate your bringing this up. We understand who we are within this state. And as I said, and I said it sincerely in my testimony, we understand, therefore, given the fact that we are public servants, that we have to do our part. I hope I'm not inappropriate, but as my colleagues would tell you, I think we use our dollars wisely. I hate to lose $1. So of course, if we have to manage the cuts, something is going to need to be done differently. We're committed to effectiveness and efficiency, but there may be reasons not to do something that we really want to do. There may be reasons we can't help as many students as we want to unless we raise tuition further. So we are loyal to the needs of the state, but we also have to run our organization in a fiscally responsible way. And of course, we're committed to that.
You're a very elegant and diplomatic person. So thank you for that response. So maybe I can say what you might not be able to say is that we appreciate the innovation, the creativity, and the leadership that you're all providing on your campuses, and particularly your commitment to ensuring students who are not necessarily coming from a longstanding tradition of college attendance don't just enter your campus, but leave it as graduates. And so I can say that our ability to be successful is really dependent upon those students having the resources to not only get in the door, but to persist through. So thank you so much for your testimony today and your continued leadership. We're greatly appreciative.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. We only have one more one witness for our next panel, and that will be Dion Williams with AFSCME. Is Dion with us today? Oh, there you are. Great to see you.
Right. Good afternoon. My name is Dion Williams, and I have worked at the University of Maryland College Park for 19 years, but more recently as a contract administrator. I am here on behalf of AFSCME Council 3, Local 1072, and I'm on our bargaining team with the University System of Maryland. I would like to respond to a few points from the analysis and provide some updates on our continued struggles with USM. First, I want to thank you for your continued support of our state workforce. This budget funds much needed raises, and we hope that you continue to support the work that we do. We continue to be very concerned and disappointed at the high use of contractual employees the USM continues to employ. There are over 6,700 contractual positions budgeted in FY25. At the same time, the USM is increasing contractual positions. The analysis points to the sharp decline of positions for academic and student support services. We believe these positions should be converted into full-time career positions to better serve our students. We also want to call on you to increase your oversight to ensure the USM, who receives billions of dollars in state funding, starts to act like other state employers. It has been over 2 years since you passed the consolidated USM bargaining bill. We were and remain grateful for your steadfast support of our union to properly designate the USM as the employer and bargaining agent. In fact, this is one of the many things they still refuse to acknowledge. Unfortunately, the USM has fought us at every turn in negotiations. We acknowledge that with the support of allies here in Annapolis, some progress has been made on some issues, including some economic subjects. However, after almost 1.5 years of negotiations, we still are not finished and have many statutorily mandated subjects that have not been settled. Issues such as privatizing of state services, the types of compensation for employees, as well as employees' rights to not be surveilled remain problems for our members. Now, with only 2 bargaining sessions remaining, it appears that we are heading to non-binding fact-finding. We expect to make our case and to win, and we also expect the USM, like Larry Hogan did when he lost, to ignore the fact-finder's recommendations because they are non-binding. We ask that this body continue to support our workers against this Leviathan and rein them in. They believe they are a business and not a public entity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and for your longstanding service to College Park. We appreciate it. I was expecting you to say 19. I was like, not 19.
I had to do the math on it.
Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. I do hope you have a good rest. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you? Okay. There are, you have a question? Okay. Thank you so much, Ms.
All right.
Williams. Appreciate your testimony. That concludes today's bill hearing for EED. Thank you.